So here's where we put into practice what we've currently been doing, and we're going to start to build the spreadsheet. There's an Excel template provided with the row and the column headings filled in. Over the course of the modules for this first part of the class, you're going to build the entire workbook with integrated financial statements. There will be a single worksheet for each of the statements plus a couple of supporting ones. The assignments are going to build on each other each week, so every week you're going to, as you start a new modules assignment, you're going to use the Excel file that you've built to that point from the previous assignments. And once you've built all of them, there's a project for this first part of the class where you'll use the workbook you built and change all the numbers in yellow for a project for a new set of financial statements, and then do the analysis. There is a handout, Building Financial Statements, that has some information and some hints and tips as you go through to build the statements, so that might be helpful. So let's get started. Once you get done, you're going to have a workbook with the printout was going to look like this. And I've given you a copy of this, a PDF copy of the homework assignment on what your Excel numbers should look like once you've got all your worksheets built. And this is going to be important because it's more important to get the Excel file built right and to understand what you're doing than to turn something into me for me to look at. If you've got all the right numbers, you should have all the right numbers because I've given them to you, and I'll actually have you turn in your Excel files to look at these numbers. So your balance sheet is going to have the current assets, the non-current assets. There's going to be yellow amounts that are numbers that we input, and for the current assets, since we have they're valued at market value, whether it's cost-based or market-based, one set of numbers, and then we just refer to them. So this 30,600 is the same as this 30,600 over here. And then down here on the non-current assets, our cost-based numbers are one set of numbers, and our market-based are another. So we actually need yellow for all of those. But when we get over here to the personal column, these numbers are the market values, so they're the same as these numbers. So we only have to put the numbers in once, and so we put them in yellow. Our personal assets are there. So personal liabilities. Current liabilities, we need to put the numbers in here once. We use them everywhere. We'll actually have to calculate deferred tax on current assets, so that's a formula. Our mortgage, our principal that's due after the next year is down here, and those numbers are the same whether it's cost or market. So we only put in the numbers once. I've used gray to just gray out things that we just don't even have them on those statements, and that kind of helps me to know I shouldn't have anything there. And so if I'm just doing a business returns, which these first four columns are, I don't have personal liabilities, and so I just gray those areas out. And then the retained earnings. So let's go ahead and get started. You'll have a file called the Financial Statement FS Template that will give you your column headings and your row headings, and so this is a good one to start from so that you don't have to spend the time doing that. In this case, it says balance sheet homework modules 1 to 6 as of December 31st. Then you've got your year here, 2010 and 2011. So each column here is going to be a separate balance sheet, and I've got a beginning balance sheet, the end of 2010, and an ending balance sheet, the end of 2011, and they're exactly 1 year apart. So I've got one for cost-based for the farm, market-based for the farm, and then a combined for market-based for the farm and the personal assets. We only do personal assets with a market-based. So the first thing that you want to do as you start to build this file is to really just kind of block out where do I need numbers and where do I not need numbers. Because the first thing you're going to have to do is put your numbers in. And so here for the current assets are valued the same for cost-based as they are for market-based, so I only need to put in numbers here. So I just highlight that whole area and click up here, my paint can. If you're on home, you're going to see a paint can and it should say yellow. If you have certain, you formatted your Excel a certain way, you may have that paint can just right here on your screen. So that's for my current assets. My current liabilities, my non-current assets, both my cost-based and my market-based. You'll notice something here though. As I've scrolled down, I've lost my column headings, so I know that this is my cost-based beginning and ending, my market-based beginning and ending. But you may not know that, and it's hard to look at. So there's a little trick we can use. If we come back up here, I only want to keep on the screen what I need to see. So I don't need to see that heading stuff, but I want to see my column headings here. And then click. Everything above where I've clicked and everything to the left will stay on the screen as I scroll. If I go into View, Freeze Panes, it's put this dark line in there. And so now as I scroll down, I've still got my column headings, and as I scroll across, I've still got my row headings. So this is going to be helpful. So now as I go down and you see the non-current assets, cost-based, market-based, these numbers are going to be different, so I'm going to actually have to put in the numbers for both of those. And I've got a little paint can here, so I can just click on that. My personal assets are only over here in the personal column, but I'm going to have to say what those are. Another thing that we can do here is, we'll gray out later. So then my liabilities, I'm going to owe the same amount for accounts payable, whether it's cost-based or market-based, so I only need to put that in once for the beginning and ending. My deferred tax I have to figure out, so I don't want to include that. Mark it out with yellow. My mortgages and my notes, I only have to do those once because I owe the same amount no matter how I valued my assets. Deferred tax I'm going to have to figure out. And then personal liabilities is another number that I'm going to have to put in. And so make those yellow. Owner's equity, there is a spot that's yellow, and that would be if I contribute capital to the business, then I've got to put what those numbers are in there. So now I've got all my yellow sections filled out, which is helpful. A couple of places I want to go in and clean this up. So if I click next to my paint can and do no fill, whoops, undo that because I did that. Come up here and click where I need to click. So feeder livestock, rather than being numbers that I fill in, this is really just a heading, a blank row. And so I want to get rid of the yellow. So if I highlight those cells, come in here and click and say no fill, it gets rid of the yellow there and cleans it up. The same for crop and feed inventory. I want to get rid of the yellow there. You can see underneath this paint can it's already looking like no fill, so I just can click the paint can. I don't need to change my color. And then the other thing that I want to do is there's certain things where I'm not using those numbers, so I want to gray them out just so that I remember that, and it helps me a little bit. So here, personal assets and total assets, I'm not using that in just the farm ones, and so I'm going to make those gray. So home, next to your paint can, click the little arrow, and then just pick a light shade of gray. If you pick black as you print it out, that uses a lot of ink, and black just looks too startling, so I usually use gray. Down here, deferred tax on non-current assets. That's only if they're market-based, and so in cost-based columns, I'm not going to use those, so I'm going to gray that out. My personal liabilities in just the farm ones, I'm not going to use it, so I gray that out. Personal net worth isn't used on the farm sheets, and so I gray that. And then valuation equity comes from the appreciation of my assets, the market value of my assets. There's not on the cost base, so I gray it out. And so this has just helped us kind of know where we need to put in numbers and where we can leave it in formulas. So your next step after you've framed this out is to actually put in the numbers. So on your homework assignment, and it's going to be very helpful to have it in front of you, after the last question on the homework assignment, which is question 4, it says use the attached information to create the financial statements. So there's 3 pages of attached information. One is the financial situation on January 1st, 2011, which is the same as December 31st, 2010. And then there's one of stuff that happens during 2011, and then another one, financial situation on December 31st, 2011. So the financial situation on January 1st will be for 2010. On December 31st, 2011 will be the numbers for 2011. So we've got to take the numbers on those sheets and get them into these yellow spots here. So the first thing that it says after the heading is cash on hand. And on January 1st, 2011, it said the farm had $113,421 of cash on hand. So here in my yellow for cash, I type in $113,421. And because this sheet has all the information for this first column, is what you're going to probably want to do is go through and just fill in the first column first, and then go to the next sheet and fill in the second column, and then you can move on to formulas. So buildings is the next one. It says book value and market value. And so buildings are a non-current asset. So under buildings and improvements down here, it says there's $30,100 of building for book value, and market value is $5,000, and so that's over here in the market value column. A lot of times we think about assets appreciating in value, but in this case the market value is much lower than the cost basis. And this can be true for buildings because when you think about it, it takes a lot of money to get a building set up, but a building, we can't really resell it to somebody else because it's in a fixed location. So sometimes because that building's in a remote area or in a fixed location, it may not have a lot of resale value by itself, and so that's why the market value on your buildings can often be lower than what your book value is. So the next asset it lists is the house. So that's a personal asset, so we want to go to the personal assets. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. Somewhere off to the side you can actually list your personal assets and then add them up and put the total in here for personal assets, or you can just start typing them in. So in this case we're in a market value column, so we only want to do the market value, and that's $156,000. So I type in $156,000. The next line says household goods, and it has a market value of $66,500. So the way that I can do that is to double click here on my formula, my 156,000, put a plus or equals at the beginning of it to make it Excel know that it's a formula, and then say plus, and then type in the next amount, which for the household goods, which is $66,500. And then you just keep going down through. Personal liabilities is the next one. And so we come down here to personal liabilities and put in 5818. And machinery and equipment is the next line. That's a non-current asset, so I come up to non-current assets. $78,935 is the book value, and $199,500 is the market value. So I'm not going to show you how to type in every single number here, but you can kind of see where you're headed with this and what you would do with them. So if you kept going, you're going to end up with an Excel file now that has numbers filled in to all those yellow spots.